Hello, friends and neighbors. Stevie Coyle here at Mighty Fine Guitars with the Friday Noontime webcast. Thanks so much for asking. It's Friday I need a device to tell me what the date is. Isn't that one of the signs of, September 22nd, 2023. I got that part right. Person, woman, man, microwave, TV. Welcome to the Friday Noontime webcast. A fairly regular feature here at Mighty Fine Guitars in bucolic Lafayette, California. East Bay, San Francisco East Bay. Come on in. Let me check and make sure that I'm where I need to be. And welcome all y'all. Looks like it. Looks like things are happening. Great. Come on in. On today's broadcast, boys and girls, I'm featuring a guitar that just walked in the door, as they all do. A Santa Cruz Guitar Company, SCGC, a style. They call it a Style 1. It's reminiscent, it's redolent, if you will, of a Martin Size 1, which was a big guitar at the turn of the previous century, in the late 1800s. Style 1 was the big one. Come on in, everybody. I think things are happening. Checking. Hi, David. Hi, Janine. There you are. Jeff Russell, very good. Come on in. Feel free to invite your friends. It's all about guitars today, and it's very brief. I have just one guitar to show you today. It's a lovely little thing, too. And here it is. Santa Cruz, Style 1. Now, they are admittedly, the great joke about Collings and Santa Cruz is that, boy, those people make great Martin guitars. They are unabashedly Martin tribute guitars. Many of them, of course, not all. But that was kind of the raison d'etre of both companies, was to kind of out-Martin Martin. What a wonderful little guitar. Strictly fingerstyle, I think, for the size of this one and the configuration, 12 frets to the body. That sound. Now, the thing that's slightly unusual about this, you probably know, Martin guitars start off with dreadnought is the big one. Then there's a quadruple O, don't see it too much. A triple O OM, same size, same body size, different scale lengths and fingerboard widths. Then there's a double O, about the size, just for reference, excuse me, about the size of a classical guitar. Then there's the O, and technically, in Martin lingo, anything below an O is a parlor guitar, although for some people, anything smaller than a dreadnought, the ones we grew up with back then, anything smaller than that is a parlor guitar. Technically, though, a parlor guitar is anything smaller than an O, and this is a size 2. There are size 1s and size 2s and size 2s and halves. And that's size-wise. They call this the Style 1. So it's pretty much got the front configuration, the dimensions, beautifully done as well, of a size 1 in Martin. But the secret weapon with Santa Cruz is they made it deeper to get more sound out of it, more bass response, more volume. They kind of deepened the guitar in kind of strangely, a Nick Lucas kind of way, which is a Gibson technique. Nick Lucas played for Gibson for years and years, and he said, these guitars, I love these guitars, they're great, but can you make these L bodies a little deeper for me? More sound, more projection, more bass. That's what Santa Cruz has done here, and boy, what a little sweetie. First of all, great curb appeal. Check out the herringbone. Cedar top. East Indian rosewood back and sides. Lovely. And let me read off to you a little bit about what Santa Cruz themselves say about this guitar. From the Santa Cruz website, standard specs, these are all standard specs, except for the fact the top is cedar and not spruce. Backstrap is a zipper, binding is Ivoroid, wood type Sitka, except this one's cedar. Ivoroid rosette, herringbone purfling. The herringbone on this is just lovely. A classy little thing. You don't even notice until you get up close, but that's when things get fun. It's when you look closely at a guitar and you say, ooh, that's elegant, that's lovely. 12 frets to the body. Scale length on this, I'm quite sure is short scale. Width at the nut is 1 3/4. Width at the 12th fret is 2 3/16. I don't know who measures there. Scale length is 24.75, 24 3/4, right, on the short end of things. Slightly longer than Martin short scale. And it's finished in clear and buffed. Tortoise pickguard, nickel Waverly with Ivoroid buttons, tuners, and it sounds like this. Oh, not that one. By the way, do feel free to sign in and let me know where you're webbing in from. And you have tuned in to the Friday Noontime webcast at Mighty Fine Guitars in Lafayette, California. This will eventually, it starts off on Facebook here, welcome Facebookers, and eventually it will make its way to Instagram, welcome Instagrammers who are seeing this a bit after the fact, and over to YouTube as well, social media. Really, for a little bit of extra depth in the body, a whole lot of extra sound, built wonderfully light, a really lovely light guitar. And really precise articulation. You could strum it, certainly, but it's really kind of a fingerstyle guitar. Although I'm sure back in the 1890s, the late 1800s, a whole lot of strumming got done on these guitars as well. Because this is the big one, people are probably saying, cousin, tune it down over there. We're trying to sing along with you. Plenty of volume on these guitars. But again, designed for the parlor. The dreadnoughts that so many of us grew up with were considered comically huge guitars when they were first seen in the 20s and 30s. And frequently people saw them on the cowboy westerns and said, what is my cowboy hero doing playing a comically huge guitar like that? It must be a bass guitar. Well, it wasn't a bass guitar. It was just a big-ass guitar. And then when the folk boom and the folk rock resurgence happened, if it wasn't a dreadnought or a jumbo in Gibson lingo's sort of giant proportions, it just wasn't a guitar. Or else it was one of them lady guitars that Joan Baez played. Or maybe that one that Bob Dylan played for some reason, iconoclast that he was. Astonishing power and projection for ostensibly a little guitar. People like little guitars these days, kids, because let's face it, a lot of music gets played sitting on the couch, watching sports, Netflix, something, and noodling happens. So while you're noodling, consider a really fine couch cuddler or sofa sweetheart, like a Santa Cruz Style 1. Did I sound like a salesman? I tried. Boy, Cedar does a thing that spruce for a top doesn't do. Spruce, typically, you just never know. They're wooden boxes, they're hugely variable. But Cedar kind of takes off that high, it attenuates the super high end of things, the sibilance, the zing. So there's a somewhat rounder sound. I hesitate, as you know, I hesitate to use the term warm, because warm means good. Everybody thinks, when they hear warm, they say, oh, that's good, warm is good. But what does it mean? Does it mean kind of fatter in the mid-range and the high-end attenuated, which is where I live on the term warm? Or does it mean it's got this big, bright, warm, kind of hot sound? I'm thinking more warm. Great mid-range guitar. As big as it is, there's not an enormous bass. It's not like a dreadnought or a jumbo. But the balance for fingerstyle, oh, is so very sweet. sweetie. Man, oh man. Comfortable. You can sit back on the couch with it. It's not going to interfere with whatever you have going on the front of your body, you know. And let's face it, as we get older, some of us do get rounder. We have more circumference. And so a smaller guitar is of interest. Well, how rude I am. Good heavens. Let me check and see who's here and if you got any comments and questions. By the way, this weekend in Lafayette is the Lafayette Art and Wine Festival. Tons of fun. Free parking at BART, a shuttle over here from BART, which is an easy walk anyway, but if you need a shuttle, there's one. The Lafayette Art and Wine Festival this weekend is a big deal. Next weekend, speaking of big deals, is Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival in Golden Gate Park. And for those two reasons, the Art and Wine, well, no, because of Hardly Strictly. I've got rehearsals this weekend, so I'm going to be closed on Saturday, is what I'm saying. I'm going to be closed next weekend because it's Hardly Strictly and I'm playing Hardly Strictly. So come on out and see. If you've not been to Hardly Strictly, it's astonishing. If you would like to go, but fear the crowds and the crush and all the rest, completely understandable. You can tune in this year on, and I'll post in this thread here, I'll post a link to the TV. You can watch some of the shows from the Towers of Gold and the Star Stage. Is that right? From a couple of the stages. I'm getting one of my names wrong. And I think there's some stuff happening in banjo this year as well. So there'll be lots of TV coverage, and it's a great setup. I think it's Roger McNamee is responsible for providing the TV services, and it's always really lovely. So with all that in mind, strings on the Santa Cruz? No, they're not the tension brand Santa Cruz strings. Jimmy, I've tried those, and I need to try them more because they just feel kind of strange to me. These are just D'Addario, regular old D'Addario 8020s. Just because it's a nice standard reference string. The Santa Cruz strings are interesting, and like I said, I need to do more experimentation because I haven't landed on whether or not I liked them. My initial hit was they're different. I hate them, which is unfair in the extreme, but it's how I roll. Hi, Tim Conrad. There we go. Yes, indeed, Todd. Compadres and the Old Sierra Madre is still one of my favorite songs. And it's a great kind of workout on the guitar. It kind of takes you all over the place to see, you listen to the middle of the neck, the top notes, you listen to the balance, cross low to high. It's in E minor, so you get to use that low E string to support the whole thing. There's a nice big fat A minor chord in there, so you get to use the open A string as well to see how chords balance against those. That's one of the great things about key of E, tiny, tiny guitar lessonette. If you're using the caged system, the C, A, G, E, and D shapes in first position up the neck, essentially, conceptually only, not in practical terms, but conceptually, using your first finger as a capo and then shaping the other chord like you do for the standard folk F chord. You take an E shape, you reshape it with your little fingers, you slide it up one fret, and you throw a meat capo down. There's your meat capo right there. Slap it down there. A B minor chord. You take an A minor chord, reshape it with your little fingers, and capo up too. Gives you a B minor. Well, if then, Jimmy Esposito will know this, being trained by the Jesuits, all of these if-then propositions. If this, then that. If this is B minor, then that's C minor. That's C sharp minor. That's D minor, D sharp minor. That must be an E minor. Sure enough. There is a place I know. Right. So you get to use this big fat E string down here, which is great in the key of E because, like so many songs, this one is essentially a 1-4-5. 1 is E, count up the alphabet, put E at 1, which is really weird at first. To not put A at 1 in any kind of count up scheme, but here you go. Put E at 1, E, F, G, A is 4, B is 5. So E minor, A minor, and B7 tell the tale. E is where the story starts, then something happens. And then this chord says, the 5 chord says, the B7 says, go back home, because that's the function of a 5 chord. So, in the key of E, you get to use 2 big fat bass strings instead of using a whole capo, a whole meat capo across all of the strings. I don't know if anybody's a really big fan of bar chords, but they're useful. But if you can steer around them, why wouldn't you? Here's an E minor chord. rather, here's an A minor shape. It's an A minor chord there, but this shape is completely portable. Once I get up here and I want an E minor chord shaped like an A minor chord, you following? I'm not going to be using, my right hand is not going to play this fifth string, so I'm just not going to finger it. That's the great thing about fingerstyle. Anything you're not playing in the right hand, you don't have to account for in the left hand. So there's a nice sparkly middle of the neck, kind of upper part of the neck, sneaking up on the high notes, E minor chord, but I still get the use of that big low string. When it's time to come around to the A minor chord, there's an A minor, but wait a minute, here's a D minor chord. If I slide that up till I get there, there's an A minor chord in real terms. Piano player in the room says that's an A minor chord. I don't care what shape you're playing. That's an A minor chord. Correct. But there's an A minor chord again with that nice sparkly up the neck sound, but I still get to use this open A string to support it. It's great. Key of A is even better because if you've got a 1, 4, 5 going in the key of A, you need an A note, an A chord, a D chord, and an E chord. Well, you've got freebie open strings, A string, D string, and E string. So A is even friendlier than the key of E in a 1, 4, 5 scheme, which, let's face it, 85% of everything you and I know is 1, 4, and 5. I've blathered enough. I'll play a little bit more for you and sign off. Thanks for tuning in to the Friday Noontime webcast. Comments and questions, please post them down below. I'll get to them in absentia here. I'll follow up and I'll keep you after school. Boy, it sings right out. It's really bold, but bold in a kind of a classy way. Instead of being really trebly and sharp like a spruce-topped guitar would probably be at this as almost certainly be. It's got a little bit of roll-off on the extreme high end. And the overtones, the way the overtones generate and stack up is really interesting, I think. It's for sale, folks. Come and get it. It's going to be in the 5s somewhere. The low mid 5s, I'm thinking, once I get the research done. The guitar just came in. I'm going to spend the rest of the afternoon playing this guitar and getting to know it a little better so I can talk about it even more. But thanks for tuning in. This is the Santa Cruz Style 1. Cedar over East Indian rosewood, extra deep body, Nick Lucas style. And it's a peach. And it comes with a super custom case as well. You probably need a Sherpa to carry the case and the guitar for you because pull out a joint somewhere. Quick look to see if there's anything needs. What's the price? Oh, of the Santa Cruz, Jimmy, it's going to be in the 5s somewhere, mid 5s, I'm thinking. Mark Moreland, Jeff, I'm not sure what year it is. I'm sure I have it on the paperwork, but it's number 102, and I'll post that down below. Good question. I should have answered that, and I should know that, and I will know that. So there. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Friday Noontime webcast, Stevie Coyle, Mighty Fine Guitars. Much appreciated. Stay tuned for, come see Hardly Strictly Bluegrass if you can, and stay tuned for future Friday Noontime webcasts. There's always something new coming in. and I'll feature it for you every week here. You can jump over, you can see a lot of previous webcasts here on Facebook under the little videos link on my page. Also on YouTube under the Stevie Coyle channel. Lots and lots of Friday Noontime webcasts end up there mere hours after they webcast live here. Down the road, everybody. Safe travels out there.